They stun the world. They beat challenges and move mountains. They make a difference. They are kings and queens, celebrities and political leaders. But most importantly, they're also everyday folks just like you. Master thinkers and movers. You can be one of them. Join the host, Maurice Nelson, and let's climb higher.
Le chemin n'est pas toujours facile, tu l'apprendras.
The road will not always be easy. You'll learn that.
Mon enfant si douce et si naïve, écoute-moi.
My beautiful sweet child, listen to me.
L'amitié est parfois plus fragile que ce qu'on voit.
Friendship is often a lot more fragile than what you see.
L'amour n'est souvent qu'une simple idylle, et c'est comme ça.
And love is often just a poem, just like that.
Et ça viendra.
And it will come.
Continue ta route.
Stay on your
Et
path.
ne laisse pas le moindre doute s'installer chez toi.
Don't allow any doubt to sink in.
Mais à chaque faux pas,
You will fall,
je serai là.
but every step of the way, I'll be there.
Continue ta route.
Stay on your path.
L'avenir c'est toi.
The future is you.
Tous ceux qui doutent ne les écoute pas.
Don't allow any doubt
Si
to
tu as
sink in.
peur et si tu perds la foi,
And if you get afraid, and if you
je
lose faith,
serai là.
I will be there.
Un beau jour je te verrai partir, tu aimeras.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Master Thinkers and Movers, as we listen to the beautiful voice of Ginette Renault. She is a very famous French singer, and her songs make a lot of sense to me. And I just wanted to share a little bit of her with you today as we start this program. This program today, we want to send a special message out to everyone who's suffering, to everyone who may be feeling like they're losing their way. We want to tell them to just hang in there, hang in there. We have a wonderful guest today by the name of Peggy Simons, and we're gonna talk about something that's a little heavy today, and we wanted to just encourage you from the beginning. Let's thank God together. Father, I praise you tonight, and I thank you for this opportunity that you're giving us to meet today on this beautiful day and on this platform that you've given us. I pray that you will please be with us every step of the way and help us to learn today. Help us to learn and help us to express hope and love in the best way that we're able to. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen. Amen.
Doute s'installer chez toi, tu tomberas, mais à chaque faux pas.
You might fall, but every step of the way, my dear friend, my dear child, my dear you put in who that person is to you. Every step of the way, you'll be there for them. And that's what this song is talking about. And if that person is ever afraid, if that person is ever feeling like they're at the end of their rope, just let them know that you'll always be there for them. This is Maurice Nelson, and the show is Master Thinkers and Movers. Hang on, we're going to go higher. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very special day for me personally. We have with us Miss Peggy Simons, and she's telling me not to put Miss in front of her name. I'm having a hard time with that. So I'm going to do my best to just say Peggy Simons, who, let me just be a little transparent. I want to call her the angel that God sent my way for many reasons. And after you hear from her, you will realize how great an individual she is and how wonderful the work that she's doing is. And it is relevant to you. It is important to you. You will find out. So with that, we're extending a very warm welcome to Peggy Simons. Good evening, Peggy Simons. How are you?
I am doing fine. Thank you for having me on the show. It's a privilege and an honor. I appreciate it.
It is my absolute pleasure to have you on this show today. Master thinkers and movers are great individuals in our communities, in our world, who are just doing great things. They are sacrificing themselves, and many of them have been through a lot. And what they do is they turn, they take the tragedy and they learn the lesson out of it that they were meant to learn out of it, and they turn around and they are helping other people face some of the greatest fears, in life. And today, I believe that you are one of those people, Peggy Simon.
No, thank you so much. I have a long story, and it goes back a long way, but I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about a lifelong journey through mental illness and then coming out on the other side as an advocate and a person that deeply cares about other people with mental illness and what happens to us.
Mm-hmm. In that context, we are going to start because I want the audience to know a little bit about you and your journey with mental illness. And a lot of people may think that, mental illness is not affecting them. I guess before you start, one of the questions, before you start on your personal, story, I guess what I want to ask you is, are there people out there who may be suffering with mental illness and not be aware of it and maybe thinking it's something else?
Oh, yes. Even from the start, I had very severe depression when I was younger in my 20s, but I didn't know what the word depression meant. So I felt bad. I was hard to get up in the morning. Everything was just so dim and sad and even lifeless. And I didn't know the word depression, that meant depression. So I didn't learn that until later on in my 30s. But a lot of people have problems with depression or anxiety or any of those and not know that those are mental illnesses. But it's nobody's fault. I think some people may have mental illnesses and not know it or feel that it was something to be ashamed of, and it's not. And it's important to connect the way you feel with the words that describe that feeling. So if you have anxiety, if you're nervous all the time, and you feel things are going to turn out badly, it's important to know the language of mental illness before you can identify that that's what's going on. And a lot of people, deep in their minds and their spirits, they know something's wrong, but they don't have anyone to talk to, or they're afraid to bring it up. But I think a lot of people suffer silently with mental illnesses and either don't know the language of that mental illness, or don't have anyone to talk to, or they're ashamed of it, or they're worried. And so I think there's a lot of mental illness out there, but a lot of it is in silent suffering.
Mm-hmm. If someone is out there and they just, how do I say this? And they just think they might have plain old depression, because we throw that word around a lot. How does someone know that they have a mental illness versus maybe what others may just call, it's just depression? And then some people may go as far as to say, what do you have to be depressed about? Because sometimes, when someone says they're depressed, they equate that with that person being ungrateful for what they have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions about depression and mental illness. And, one of the first things that it's important to understand about this depression is it's okay to feel that way. And, sometimes it's actually a brain disease. And the thing about depression that is difficult for people to understand is you can't just, people say, just snap out of it, or just pull yourself up, or you have everything to be happy for, so why are you depressed? And it's a misunderstanding about the depth of that feeling of depression. And that when people, cross the line between, generally being worried, and they start to get depressed, and things, nothing looks like it's going to turn out well. Everything looks dark, and it's hard to get out of bed, and it's hard to get along in your life because it causes low energy. It causes people to lose concentration. And when it gets to be that point, then it's true depression, and it's not something you can just snap out of. So when you have depression and people say, oh, you have everything to be happy, or just snap out of it, and you can't, then that's a frustrating thing, because it's clear that if you could snap out of it, or you could just pick yourself up by your bootstraps, if you could do that, you would. And by the time depression really settles in, you can't snap out of it. And at that point, I think it's important that find help, or, look for some kind of help. Or so at that point, true depression is a serious thing.
Having a Caribbean background, Peggy, we are grateful for so many things. We live in gratitude. And so when you see someone who's got everything in terms of the basic necessities of life plus everything else, and when you see someone who's living like you are living and they're calling themselves depressed, sometimes it's not easy for the typical Caribbean American person to understand that. What advice would you have for someone like that who's having trouble understanding the depth of somebody's depression?
It's difficult to see inside someone's mind and their heart and their spirit, and I think it's a state of mind that actually, I think in a lot of ways is a lot of times biochemical. There's something wrong with the brain and how it works, but I think it's a positive approach to be grateful for everything. And at this point in my life, I'm 67, and I look back and I'm so grateful for so many things. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I was most grateful for in my life, and I'm so grateful for it that it's defined my life, is when I reached out, and I reached out for help, and somebody understood and was able to talk to me and help me with the way I felt. That created a whole world outlook of gratitude for me. And so I think that when people can make the connection between the way they feel and reaching out for help, even in the professional world, that the gratefulness is like a sun that rises over your life, mm-hmm. and you never forget the kindness of other people who understand.
So it's if I'm hearing you properly, or if I'm hearing you correctly, as we come across family members, because sometimes we might have family members who are acting a certain way, and we're thinking it's because they're ungrateful, or we're thinking it's because they're just bad, they're just acting badly. Meanwhile, they may be fighting with a mental illness, right?
Oh, absolutely, because when I was just profoundly depressed, I was almost paralyzed, and I'd sit on the couch all day long because I was just too depressed to actually move. And then my mom would come home and find me like that, and it just looked like I was ungrateful. Like, why wasn't I getting up and helping around the house? And that is a perception that if you don't understand the power of depression to just stop you in your tracks, it can look like that you're just ungrateful. I did see that in my own family. Mm-hmm. So, you can't, it's hard to see inside somebody's spirit and their heart and to see what's going on. Really, you can't see it like an x-ray. You can't see it like a broken bone. And so that is the way, at least in my family, that it was a perception of just being ungrateful. I do see that. So it was a problem in my family. It was years. It was in the old days. It was really before, modern medicine. And people just didn't understand that the depression just stops someone in their tracks and they just can't do anything. Mm-hmm. It was like my mom, she did see that as being ungrateful. She's a wonderful woman. And, she came out on the other side of that perception. But that is the way, that happened in my family.
Wow. Right before we go and take a break, I've been all over your website, and I have a lot more to look at. And I am in love with your personal writings, but I also came across, we'll talk about the personal writings in a little bit, but I came across an article, or as I'm reading all over the place, you are somebody who's really advocating the fact that mental illness has a biological component to it. And so what I'm getting from that is that we may not understand why someone is or seems to be ungrateful, that it goes beyond that. It's a disease. It's a biological something going on in the brain, right?
That's the most important thing I think that people can understand. It's a pivot point. It's so critical to understand that something is going on in someone's body. It's misfunction. It's the activity of the brain, and actually they're beginning to be able to see some of that on imaging. You can see a person who is depressed. You can actually see that on some of the the imaging things right now. But I mean, that's the most important thing that I think I bring to this conversation.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Caribbean Rhythms Radio Network. The show is Master Thinkers and Movers, and we have a master thinker and mover with us today in the person of Peggy SYMONS. And we're going to take a little break. We will be right back. You stay right there. Samarita Global Outreach. Let's never grow tired of doing good. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization based in the United States, but having a worldwide outreach. We exist for the sole purpose of doing good. We promote the gospel of Jesus Christ while providing humanitarian aid or relief to those in need. From our youth Super Champ program to Femme Cajou for the ladies and Samarita for Christ, our mission ministry, and many other programs and activities, there is something for everyone. You can email us at info@choosenelson.com or at mysamarita@gmail.com or contact us at 407-346-1590. That's 407-346-1590. We're also on all social media platforms, and you can visit our website at mysamarita.com. Listen, the harvest is plentiful. Samarita Global Outreach, let's never grow tired of doing good. Thank you so much for your support. And we are back with Peggy SYMONS, who's representing so many things and so many organizations and so many platforms. She is a member of NAMI, which we will talk about that. That is a godsend of an organization, and they are national. But right here, I wanted for you, Peggy, if you could, I will let you talk. If you could just give the folks a little bit of your story.
My story just starts back really from the day I was born. There's mental illness in my family, so that there was a genetic component, and it's not always. Some people can't look back in their family and say that it was an ancestor or a relative, but in my case, it was in my family, and my brothers and sisters some of my brothers and sisters deal with it. So it's an interesting thing to realize that the total context of a mental illness is biological, and that was my experience with it. But from very early in life, I was very different from other children. By the time I was in kindergarten, my parents were asked to take me out of school because back then the word was retarded. They don't use that word now, but that's the way the mental illness appeared in the school system. And mothers know their children. And, my mom knew that what was wrong was not that I was intellectually disabled, it was something else. But back then, it was really strongly believed that children were not capable of having a mental illness. Well, now that's not true. People know that children can have mental illness. In fact, 75% of mental illnesses start before age 14. Yeah, 75%. So anyway, by the time I got into middle school and high school, it was clear that I had a mental illness. So, it was a lifelong journey, and really things became psychotic by the time I got into my late teens. And so I started hearing voices, and I started believing that the government was looking for me or trying to capture me, and had a whole bunch of symptoms that, for other people were totally nonsense, not understandable or even alien. I mean, people just didn't believe these bizarre things, and people didn't see things or hear things like I was. And it was like in those years, I was in my late teens, and there was nobody I could talk to And when I started hearing voices and seeing, I didn't know what was happening to me, and I wasn't close enough to anybody to talk to about it. So by the time I was 19, I was desperately trying to get through college, and I ended up hospitalized after a suicide attempt. And so, went on from then into my 20s and 30s, just multiple hospitalizations. But, back when I was 19, 20, and I was first hospitalized, that was in the days before the new medications. And so there was really, I never knew anybody with schizophrenia or bipolar disorder that really recovered on those old medicines. Mm-hmm. So I was in and out of the hospital probably 19 times. And in 1998, new medicine came on the market, and I had failed on multiple medications. So, I was really in bad shape, and the doctor said, I want you to try this new medicine. Well, I wasn't really interested in that because I had failed on so many other drugs. So, but it worked. And so in 1998, I was in my 40s, and it was so different that I had to get to know somebody I didn't even know. Mm-hmm. So, I had lost most of my life to severe mental illness. And so there I was. I found myself standing there at age 40, having to get to know somebody I didn't know. I mean, areas of my brain that I didn't even know was there just lit up and started to interconnect. And, I found out I had an ability to speak and write that I never knew I had before. Mm-hmm. So in 1998, although I have to say, the medicine didn't cure the illnesses, and right now there are no medicines to cure these illnesses, but there are medicines that can be very helpful when they're, carefully prescribed by experts in the use of those medicines. But in 1998, I didn't know what to do with my life. I'd lost half my life to it, and so that's when I found the National Alliance on Mental Illness of Greater Orlando, and so they started taking me into law enforcement classes where we would teach the law enforcement officers what's going on in a person's mind when they get into crisis or they somehow encounter law enforcement officers. So that was part of the thing that NAMI brought me into. They started taking me into college classrooms where I would tell my story. And we went, NAMI's taking me everywhere that they go. They're taking me with a story that people like to hear because it's a positive ending to well, it's not even an ending, it was a beginning mm-hmm. of a very difficult journey. And I came out of it with determination to let the world know families don't cause these illnesses. They're biological. They don't understand them completely now. But some of the families that I've encountered over the years with the National Alliance have been some of those fiercely loving, caring, faithful people on earth. And, they have loved ones and, their desire is to help them. But that's where, there's a path there that I began to take in 1998. And, my illness wasn't cured, but I looked around and I saw vast need. There was just very few people that would go in front of the legislature or go to college classrooms and advocate for people. And over the years, I found there are people who just don't have any voice. Mm-hmm. And so, we're poorly represented in the legislature. And where I find people are just so interested in the story is to hear aspects of the illness that you just never hear from or understand, like hearing voices or just being so severely depressed that, sometimes people even want to end their lives. And that's, I went through that too for many, many years until I got on the new medicine. But, people are interested in a lot of people are dealing with it and nobody knows it. Mm-hmm. And when they hear that message of hope, they'll grab it in their heart and they'll walk away with some feeling that things could get better. But, what I've discovered too is that there really, as far as necessary care out there for people, there's a huge gap of available care for people who can get better mm-hmm. or who need intensive care, and it's pretty much not there. And that's where I picked up the wind of the path that the Holy Spirit set out for me. That my journey is still ongoing, and it is the journey to bring hope to people who many have no hope. That's my story.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story, and there's just so much more to it. So much more than we have time for in a 1-hour program. And like I told you, I'm hoping this is something that we can do every now and then to just bring so much more awareness to this issue. And there's just, to follow up, there's so many different places I want to go. But let's talk about NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. This has got to be the life-saving organization for so many people, Peggy. And one of the things that the people need to know about this is NAMI's been around forever, it seems, as I research it. And what caught my attention, when I went on the website, was that a lot of the services are free. It's a nonprofit organization because most people, when they're dealing, with someone who has mental illness, it's the cost of getting services. Everything is so expensive, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, there's nothing out there. And yet NAMI provides a lot of the support for the families and a lot of support, for the individuals themselves. I would like you, before we go on our next break right now, if you could just talk a little bit about NAMI, who it's for, and what our listeners can expect to get, once they start becoming friends of NAMI.
NAMI really has given me the purpose and the place to go to tell my story. NAMI does go way back, almost like into the late 70s and 80s. And initially, it was just a small group of family members meeting in living rooms. And, back then, in the 70s and even the 80s, that it was believed that families caused mental illness in their children. But the people got together and they said, we're not taking this anymore. We know that we didn't create mental illness in our children. So it started out as a revolution against that blaming families and all the stigma that caused. And so over the years, and this is what's amazing about this organization, is that it survived from initially just small meetings into what they were called the nation's voice on mental illness. We have chapters in every 50 states. We're even other parts of the world. And it's an interesting organization because it's mostly driven by volunteers, family members mostly. And so that an organization that's basically volunteer-driven has turned into an amazing, well-oiled machine that represents people on state, local, and national levels. But we people come from all walks of life, and basically the shift, NAMI has created this shift in the perception that mental illnesses are caused by families, and we've shifted the point of view into knowing that they're biological illnesses, they're no one's fault, and that people who are affected by this illness often have great courage and great promise. So I've gone to I've gone to the convention since like 2004, and every time I come, it's the big convention, thousands of people. And one time I was sitting in the hallway, I was watching hundreds of professionals and families and people who have mental illness, and there was a lady sitting next to me, and she said, God has blessed this organization. And I looked at all those people, and I said, yes, he has.
Wow.
NAMI has turned into, we have an outreach to youth, so we're very much integrated into the internet and outreach to youth, the faith-based. So it's an interesting organization with a lot of different programs. And yes, the nice thing is that we have different programs, and they're all free. Because basically we're volunteer driven, and we accept donations, and some of the government organizations and big companies have recognized our value, and so they donate to NAMI. So between donations and volunteer workers, we've turned into an amazingly highly effective national organization. We go into the U.S. Congress and state legislatures and ask for priorities to be set for mental illnesses. And what's really nice about the National Alliance is everybody has been affected by a mental illness in that group. So when you go around and you're with like-minded people, and it's amazing what we've accomplished over the years, and those accomplishments still keep getting better and wider reach. And, you know, this organization, like that lady sitting next to me, God has blessed this organization, and yes, He has blessed us.
That's wonderful. And in NAMI, I speak a little French. The word ami is there, which means friend. So when I first came across it and I went over, you know, I went through the website, and I said to myself, yeah, this is really a friend, you know, to people who are suffering. And those of you who are listening today, if you are in the position to make a donation, or if you want to look into an organization that's really moving, you have some great thinkers in there and they are moving, you want to look into NAMI, N-A-M-I. It's a National Alliance on Mental Illness. There's a chapter in Orlando. They have support groups in Kissimmee. It doesn't matter where you are in all over the nation. You can reach out to somebody. And again, the services are free. And another great thing, I think the best thing about NAMI is that a lot of the support groups that you can go to are led by people who are directly affected by mental illness. Those are people who are dealing with it with their husbands, with their kids, etc. And so when you go, they listen to you and they know exactly what to tell you. They know exactly where to lead you because they're living with it themselves. And in many cases, many of them have been living in it for such a long time that they can really give you some great information and wonderful resources to help you along the way. We are going to take a break. We want you to just hang on. We're going to come right back with Peggy SYMONS. Peace of mind, that's what you deserve. And that's why you need to call C&J One Stop Services, Maurice Nelson Consulting, for your income tax, immigration, credit repair, and a wide range of other professional services. We also specialize in writing and editing, so don't sweat over that speech or make costly mistakes in your promotional material. No, call us 321-804-8044. We're located in beautiful downtown Orlando. The number again, 321-804-8044. C&J One Stop Services, Maurice Nelson Consulting. You get our best every time. And we've come back having a wonderful conversation with Peggy SYMONS, who's representing NAMI and who's also an advocate for individuals, wonderful individuals who suffer from mental illness. And where I want to go right now, Peggy, is the stigma, the way that we, and myself included, I have changed my perspective over the years, but I used to think also that individuals, when you mention mental illness, they were crazy people and people you couldn't trust around you and so forth. Can you speak a little bit on that?
Yes. I mean, even back in the 70s, the stigma was that mental illnesses were spoken of in hushed voices, if at all. There were, the word schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, they were so fear-producing because people have these stereotypes of people who have mental illness as violent. That's pretty common, and I think that still remains to some effect. But stigma really, if there's any other illnesses, biological illness that create more stigma, it's mental illnesses. So a lot of the fight we've had to go through to get funding in the legislature and bring legitimacy to this illness to the public has been, coming against stigma. And to me, one of the most profound, regrettable aspects of stigma is that oftentimes still is that people think that it's families who create these illnesses. So the blame is still there, I think. It's hard to get out the message that they're biological illnesses, but even in 2020, we're still encountering enough stigma and stereotypical beliefs that it affects the position of mental illness in America. And I think it still causes perception problems with these illnesses. So I think stigma is getting better because people are talking about mental illnesses now. There's so much despair and depression and despondency with the pandemic that more people are talking about it. And as more people talk about it, it is really apparent that a lot of people are dealing with it. And celebrities, sports giants are talking about their experiences with mental illness. And especially with young people, the stigma is really, it's getting much less, and people are more open to it. But it's been a very, very long period of time that stigma and discrimination actually have really marked the progress of mental illness in America. It's getting better, but it's still there, and I think that it's something that we still have to deal with when we're going in front of the state legislature and asking for priority and more money, that we're still having to break through some of the stereotypical beliefs that still stigmatize mental illness. And that's another pivot point for where I've taken my own journey, is that breaking down stigma and stereotypes is one of the most important things that I think I do.
We need that so much, especially with the younger, individuals. And I'm thinking about the ones in their 20s, Peggy, that are, that this, like you said, they always knew something was wrong, right? But for the most part, I just wanted you to comment on that a little bit. A lot of them, what I learned going through NAMI and talking to some people, is that the 20s are really tough as the mental illness, I guess, I don't know if it's right to say reaches its peak, but they start to really be affected, and they don't know what's going on, and that really drives up the suicide rate. I just wanted you to comment on that a little bit.
Yeah, I would have to identify with the 20s as being, it was the hardest time in my life. And, it's the 20s, it's like so hard because you're watching people, my brother, were graduating from high school, from college, they were going into the military, they had jobs, they were starting families, and here I was in my 20s, I was still in and out of hospitals, and I was still not responding to treatment, because back then there was very little that could help people. But my 20s were the hardest years of my life. And I think that I made it through because I did find people who gave me the support I needed. But, when mental illnesses first become apparent, I think I have to check my statistics with NAMI facts, but 75% of mental illness, the symptoms start showing by 14. And then by 24, I think the percentage is even higher. And what I found out, and this is really interesting about what happens when you're in your 20s, is that the human brain matures on into the 20s. And so when a person's brain is in that final phase of maturity, there's all kinds of activity in the brain, and something goes wrong. And so I think that's why the 20s are so difficult, is because it was that late phase of brain development, something goes wrong.
Wow. There's an area, and as I'm listening to you, because you said the symptoms may start as early as 14. So there's probably an area right there, an overlapping area where we as parents may think that the kids are just acting out because they're teenagers, but really there might be something that we're missing. Is there a way for parents to really know, what's going on when they see certain behaviors at that early age?
Yeah, it's real easy to not know what degree of, it's kind of even a frightening thing for a parent to think, well, my teenager is staying in their room and they're having, but, what the clue is it's, beyond what's normal. And that's real hard for parents to discern. I think at that point, it's okay to reach out to somebody who, even the school, if you think your child is having a problem, you very well could be right. And I think that's the point, to reach out to the school counselors or a medical professional to find out, is there in fact a problem? I think where the line crosses and blurred, it's a blurry line, is where normal teenager, normal child behavior is going beyond the point of, normal moodiness. But I think at that point, if you have an idea that something could be seriously wrong, I think it's reasonable. It's a good thing to check it out, and I'd start with the school counselor.
Okay. Caribbean Rhythms Radio Network, a discussion today on mental illness. Those of you out there, some of you are not wanting to talk about it because I know in our culture it's taboo. Where I'm from, it's not something that's addressed at all. And it's very unfortunate. So hopefully today you're hearing something that's new, and you're hearing something that's bringing you some hope, because that's what Peggy SYMONS is about. Having gone through it, her whole platform right now is encouraging you and letting you know that there is hope ahead. Peggy, thank you so much for doing this today. I can't tell you how many lives you're touching by doing this interview today.
I'm so grateful for this opportunity to reach out to people, because I know there's all the people that are listening. There are probably people who don't recognize it, or who feel hopeless or don't know what to do. And, outreaching through your radio program, I think, is one of the most important things I've ever done in my life, and I so appreciate it.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I definitely want to keep that going on every platform I'm part of. I just want to carry this message along, because especially now during this COVID, what I heard on the news was after we go through COVID, the big story is going to be mental illness.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We're going to move on to a story of yours that I absolutely love. You have these hope writings that I absolutely love, personal writings of hope, let's say, that really do, they do the job of providing hope. But right before we get to that, I just wanted you to give a message because I heard you talk about your mother, and you understand how hard it is for caregivers of people who suffer, with mental illness, how the caregivers really are stressed, how difficult it is for them, and many times they don't know what to do or where to go. So what encouraging word would you have for someone, a mother, a father, somebody who's sitting there and they've just had it, and yet that's their loved one, they've got to be there with them in the journey?
I think, looking back at my mom was a single mother. She raised 8 children alone. She found herself a single mother of 8 kids when she was 29 years old. And, looking at, my mother passed away in December. And it's like looking back, it's almost like looking back over a continuum of her entire life. And she had 8 kids, and she had one child who had a psychotic illness. And looking back, I could, it was so draining for her. She worked full time. She was raising 8 kids. She didn't know what was wrong, and it was draining for her. And sometimes, she didn't understand, and she would get angry, which that was a perfectly natural thing to do. The frustration of knowing I was ill and feeling like there was nothing she could do about it. And then there was a constant worry. My mom, she would come home from work never knowing if she was going to find me gone of suicide. So the stress that she lived with, it was breaking. And I just, looking back over her life, I don't know how she did it, except that, I had to, recognize that it is love, that it was love that really brought me out of feeling like I was alone. Mm-hmm. And it basically, it's draining. It can be very frightening. Mm-hmm. But always remember that the most important thing that you have is love for your child or love for your loved one. Mm-hmm. And it's that love that'll that'll carry you through, I think. And sometimes things don't end well, but it's important to never blame yourself as the caregiver for anything that was out of your control. But I do give this message of hope and understanding that love bond between you and your loved one is the most important thing.
That's great. And NAMI, from some of the other support group leaders whom I've met, they recommend that you, as a caregiver, that you take out time out for yourself, maybe going for a walk regularly, just doing some things to deal with the stress, because it is very, very stressful, correct?
Oh, and I said, looking back over my mother's life, I don't know how she did it.
Mm-hmm.
And, but, it's like she always knew, even when I was a child, something was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But I just look back at my mother and I just really wonder how in the world she did it.
Wow.
So, it's just, I think, the hardest thing is sometimes for family members.
Mm-hmm. But you said it's love.
Yeah, it's like, I hear this everywhere. I've been hearing this for years. And it's that if only we had NAMI, all these years that people don't know what's wrong with their child. And then they get into a NAMI program. They learn all about the illnesses.
Mm-hmm.
They learn how to respond effectively. They find out what works and what doesn't work.
Right.
They get the information on the biology and the medicines. And I have heard it so many times, if only we had NAMI.
Wow.
All those years. So, it saves families, it saves marriages. It's a wonderful organization, support.
Yes, and I'm pushing for NAMI everywhere I go. It's a lifesaver, and it's free. We're gonna switch. And what I'm gonna do, Peggy, is I'm gonna read the whole, it's not very long, writing that you have called Capturing the Little Cat Feet. Because I want people to understand, to me, Peggy, you go around speaking and bringing hope to people. And, and you have all these different things that you do. But to me, you are the message, You are the message, because you lived through this, right? Diagnosis of schizophrenia and bipolar. You lived through it. You lived, you talk about being in your 20s, 30s, and like so long with it, with the suicidal attempts and just reaching a place where you didn't want to go anymore, to the point where now you are advocating for people. This is the essence of Master Thinkers and Movers. Yeah. You've taken your experience and now you're using it in the most positive of ways, and you have had an effect positively on so many lives. You are saving lives, Peggy Simons.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And you know what, I have to say this, is that nothing could happen for me until I got on the right medicine at the right dose at the right time. Mm-hmm. And it's just like rivets me right back to the biological nature of it. That, once I got on the right medications, it opened a whole new world for me. And, every day that I'm aware of this medication that worked for me, and I thank God for it. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons I go out and advocate for access for people.
Amen to that. And we're going to recommend for people to go to NAMI's website. You guys are good on the internet. You know how to do this stuff. So just type in NAMI, and it'll take you to the website and go through it. When you call them, you're going to get the most pleasant individual at the end of the line, and you can talk to them, tell them what your needs are. They are so patient. They will listen to you. They will send you stuff immediately by email, and they'll let you know what's going on your side of town. So don't feel like you're alone. NAMI really is a friend. NAMI is a friend for you right now, and you don't have to worry about any fees associated with the services that they provide. So let's go into the Capturing the Little Cat Feet. I love this. Capturing the Little Cat Feet, Peggy Simons. One of the most treacherous traits of this illness is its slow roll. It's not like a sudden drop off the cliff. It rolls in on little cat feet, like the fog moving in, on the words of poet Walter Whitman. For several months, I kept hearing people call my name over and over. Some were loud. I whipped around to see who was calling me. They met me in some shadowy days preceding this page. They were some form of hallucinations, I suppose, but they didn't appear like roaring lions or voices with teeth. They were soft but certain. I kept seeing things out of the corner of my eyes, momentarily mistaking them for something else. This summer, tropical storm warnings were up over Florida, with the additional possibility of tornadoes. One of my friends was out of state, so I went over to pick up some things in her yard that could have become projectiles in high winds. When I was in the backyard, I heard a woman calling my name. I looked up into the closed porch and saw her just outside the door, but just for a few seconds. She was a dark figure with no features. I couldn't discern her face or hands. She was wrapped in some kind of darkness that cloaked her so closely she had no defining identity, but I knew I didn't know her. Although she disappeared quickly, she frightened me. Then, when I went into the house, I thought I saw my cat, but this was not an outright visual hallucination either. My friend keeps an off-white porcelain jug on the floor near the doorway between their kitchen and living room. The jug was the same beige color as my cat. I caught the jug out of the corner of my eyes thinking, what is my cat doing here? But after a tiny moment, I realized it was just the jug, not my cat. They still haven't gone away. Something small and dark ran past my feet early this morning. I wish I could fully capture these things with my eyes or hold them at arm's length to see who or what they really are, but they move too quickly. What reopened the door to these living shadows? Years of sleep apnea, aging, or did they just figure out how to slip past my medicines? Time will tell. Several months have passed. The fleeting phantoms that came in on little cat feet roll back into the fog in which they came. The coast is clear. Eventually, research will permanently capture the pitter-patter of little cat feet. Hopefully, no one will ever stumble over them again. Peggy Simons, that is the most beautiful thing I've read in my life.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that. And when you read it, it was like you were reading something to me for the first time. And and I just realized that when people see things that aren't there, that it was a very human, it was just like almost a natural, sort of vision, and that people could understand it. Like I said, I haven't read that in years. It was just like you were reading something new to me. Wow. I appreciate that.
You got it. It is so well written. It is so poetic. And at the same time, when you sit there, because I told you I was reading it in the early mornings, like 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was very quiet when I was reading it. So I was really paying attention. And I was reliving it. It's like I was going through it with you. And I got to understand something that you said, that it's a lifelong battle. There are little things that still remain. And yet this little opening into your reality helps us to understand more what this struggle is. But to me, its greatest thing is the victory that you've had, because at the end, all your stories are about hope. And you said, well, this too has gone away, even if it's for now. And I don't know. I'm speechless. You take over.
I just when I look back at my survival and how I came out on the other side. I have 7 brothers and sisters, and over the years, they've supported me, they've loved me, they've been unconditional in their acceptance of my illness, and even when I was diagnosed, they didn't know what to do, but they didn't stop loving me, and they never pushed me away as if I didn't belong to the family. Mm-hmm. So, I have a lot of support over the years of my illness, and I have to say, raising 8 kids by yourself is hard for my mom, mm-hmm. but 7 brothers and sisters have been an enormous support for me. And, when you gather up hope from different places, mm-hmm. I look back over my whole experience of living with this illness, and I see hope that came to me from so many places. NAMI support, NAMI, all the opportunities I had with NAMI, my wonderful brothers and sisters, my mother's great love, and I think that, I think I put this on my website, it takes a village of assistance, mm-hmm. and to surround people with a mental illness, with family, with schools, that wrap around acceptance and love and understanding for a mental illness, that's as good as it gets, mm-hmm. and that's where hope, raises that victory flag.
Wow. It was an absolute pleasure, Peggy Simons. Absolute pleasure. When they first told me about you, I couldn't wait to meet you. And then I got to meet you, and I wanted more of you. And you're just amazing. You're an incredible human being, the best of us in this world. And you bring so much hope and love and understanding. And thank you for the sacrifices you've made. Thank you for staying alive for me. You stayed alive for me and all the people who are listening to you right now.
Yeah, it has been an honor and a privilege to come to your radio show. To reach out to people that I don't even know, that could walk away with hope from this show. You have given me a great gift. You've given me a platform. You've given me an honor and a privilege, and I'm very grateful for being on your show.
Oh, thank you, Peggy Simons. We're the ones who are grateful. You keep doing great, and of course, we're going to keep praying for you to continue to do well. And I know it's not the last time we're talking. It's not the last time you're coming on this show. So I'm looking forward to the next time, okay?
Okay, thank you so much.
Le chemin n'est pas toujours facile, tu l'apprendras.
Caribbean Rhythms Radio Network, Master Thinkers and Movers. Maurice Nelson. Thank you, Peggy Simons. Thank you to all our listeners. Have a wonderful week. Enjoy the holidays. See you later.
L'amour n'est souvent qu'une simple idée, et c'est comme ça, et ça viendra.